talked about the seven archetypes of being a good project manager. And those are the communicator, the enforcer, the builder, the leader, the attorney, the accountant, and the business developer.
Communication is not really so much about what you say, it's about what they understand. Not making this a very vertically stacked team. The leader likes to spread command and authority across their people. Build a team so strong that you don't know who the leader is. The attorney doesn't use the contract as a weapon. Okay? Hey, the contract says this. They use it as a roadmap, a playbook. As a project manager, whose also job is to manage and control risk, you need to know.
In this episode of Constructing Tomorrow, we have Kyle Nitchen. Kyle is a senior project manager at Layton Construction. He also runs a newsletter called as the Influential Project Manager, which is focused on principles, strategies, frameworks, and technology of successful project leadership. In this episode, we discuss the seven archetypes of becoming an influential project manager, along with some actionable tips and tricks to utilize and apply it in your life. With that said, I bring you Kyle. Hi, Kyle. Thanks for being here and welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm super excited specifically for this one because it's going to be packed with a lot of tips, tricks, hacks on how to be a good project manager, or I should say, influential project manager. So for those of you who don't know, Kyle also runs an awesome newsletter called as the Influential Project Manager. I'll drop down the Substack link in the description. Do check it out. He also posts a lot of great content on LinkedIn, so definitely check him out. How are you feeling today, Kyle?
I'm feeling great. We did a little talking before this, and I'm excited for the topics. We're going to get actionable tips, hacks, like you said, to so that you can take these and apply them hopefully tomorrow.
Yeah. So I want to jump right in. I know you talk a lot about project management practices and how to be a good and effective project manager. And there was one awesome post on your Substack where you talked about the seven archetypes of being a good project manager. And those are the communicator, the enforcer, the builder, the leader, the attorney, the accountant, and the business developer. I wanted to go through each and every one of these and just try to pick your brain on your insights. What were you thinking when you wrote this? What are some of the tips and tricks that young professionals and also seasoned project managers could apply it in their lives?
This was a framework that I created um, developing in my career, trying to figure out, all these different roles and responsibilities that a project leader or a project manager has. And I feel this framework, what we're about to keep going into, does a really good job of capturing all those roles and gives you a roadmap to improve yourself and 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 see where your weaknesses are so that you can be a very well-rounded project manager. Well-rounded project managers is what you want to strive for, because if you're really strong in some areas, you're going to have bigger gaps in others, which could create risk and problems down the road.
So the first one is the communicator. So just how to communicate effectively, because essentially construction is everything about communication. You're talking with a lot of people above your age, below your age. How do you communicate effectively?
Yeah, so communication, I like to boil it down to the goal being clear communication. That's really what you need to achieve on your projects, in your business, in your work, really in your life, to be honest. Clear communication. Um, and let's define that real quick. The clear communication is when the idea in my head and the idea in your head is the exact same after I communicate it to you. So communication in the traditional sense or in the average sense is just basically, hey, let me just tell you something. Let me just tell you this. Let me tell you that. Let me communicate it to you. So, but really, communication is not really so much about what you say, it's about what they understand. Okay. So just flipping on like that, you can get the message across. So always check for alignment. Figure out who's on the other side of this communication. What are they doing? How are they feeling? What are their personality behaviors? Um, what may be important to them? Let me organize my communication hierarchically so that I lead with the answer, the exact takeaway that they need to understand from this communication, and then let me back it down with the details. That's called the pyramid method right there. That's just a tool that you can use to become a good communicator. um, what we see in projects and in um, relationships in general is people do the opposite. They'll lead with telling a story or all the little bits, and we like that around the campfire or on the telling stories with our families, but we don't like that in project management. Like we need answers, clear, concise. Here's the main takeaway, and here are the 3 points to support my main takeaway, like right up front, because we're all busy, we're all trying to achieve things, we're all um, scatterbrained because we have so much going on. So you have to keep that in mind. That is what the communicator is all about. um, that is what that archetype. So embodying those skills and frameworks so that you can get your message across quickly, efficiently, and at scale across projects, upstream to your owner, downstream to your subcontractors, side stream to your architects and engineers. There's all this communication, so you really have to dial in your strategies and your practice so that your communication has serious impact, and you'll see the outcomes start to get more reliable. Think people take what you say and they execute. um, or a problem gets solved really quick, and those bottlenecks being alleviated like really help out a project.
Yeah. I think the structure point that you mentioned kind of hit home for me because it's like how you communicate to, say, your project manager, and how you communicate to the project executive and senior leadership. The communication style differs a lot. Like, you need to know how much detail to provide. Like you said, you're so caught up in the things that you like to give out all the details. You like to give the entire story, but to your point, just, hey, this is the conclusion. Here are three things, mitigation strategies, or three inputs or three observations from this entire thing. So I love that point. The second one we have here is the enforcer. I wanted to start with, what do you mean by that?
So the enforcer is the archetype of the person who sets the standards and holds the standards, enforces them. Because what do we often see in construction, right? In our business, construction management, building things, we go on a job site, we'll see a bunch of great signs that say, uh, clean as you go, nothing hits the floor, um, do your PTPs, plan your work, show up at 6:45 for the morning huddle. Um, all these great things, but then you walk the job and you see stuff's on the floor. You know, people are walking in late. People aren't wearing their safety glasses. Um, hey, you're asking for a change order so that you could wrap it up and submit it to your client, and the change order comes in 3 weeks late. And really just you're sitting there. So the enforcer is not your this mode of being, this archetype is not your pal, it's not your friend, it's not your buddy. It's the enforcer. Nothing gets past the enforcer. He holds the line for a reason, and it's actually out of a sign of respect, because he respects you, because or he or she respects you, respects the project, respects your safety, your health, um, your profitability. The enforcer will make sure the standards are held, and if not, the enforcer will have the right conversation and say, hey, this is why this is important. I'm communicating this to you, and it doesn't appear that it's resonating with you. Do I need to explain it a little bit differently? I'm going to give you one shot here. Okay. Um, you didn't show up for my safety orientation. That's the one shot I'm going to give you, max. The other time we need to think about either retraining you or talking to the right person or understanding the deeper issue. If there's a deeper issue, then let's talk about it. So that is the behavior types and the goals of the enforcer. And it's a really important, this one is, I think, one of the hardest ones for PMs or leaders to to grasp because it's uncomfortable. It can be uncomfortable, especially if you're not in the right framework. You're not thinking about respect, if you're not thinking about um, timeliness and running a good, smooth, efficient, safe, and predictable operation. You need standards, and you need your people to la- understand the standards and hold the standards with you. Otherwise, you need a root cause analysis and make changes, because continuing down just blowing by standards is how projects get out of control. Big incidents happen. Um, you know, a budget could just blow up. Someone could lose money. It's bad. So it's an important um, archetype to get down. Yeah.
Yeah. And something that ties into this is always the conversation about accountability and responsibility. And we often confuse these two terms. So I wanted to ask the difference between them and how we should. There's a fine line between it. So if you could talk about that.
Yeah. There's very fine line there. Accountability is being the one that has to account for something. It's like, I'm accountable for this project. That means that, everything that goes on this project, I will be the one who's got to account for it and report it to somebody, right? It's there. I'm accountable. I'm owning it. Responsibility is a little bit um, is a little on the a step lower than that. It's like I could be responsible for a task that's part of it, but I don't necessarily need to account to it to others, I'm responsible to execute it, but the results of it, I'm not accountable for the results. I might be responsible for the task, but the person that's accountable for accountability, I think that's the difference there, is the results portion of it. That's what you're tied to. So I think that's the big difference there.
Got it. Um, so the next one that I have is the builder. So what are some good qualities as a project manager you should have to satisfy that archetype?
Yeah. So the builder is the best way to think about that is the behavior and the archetype, the model of your senior superintendent, the master builder, the guy that can build a schedule, see what's not on the plans, identify gaps and before way ahead of time, because they've built things. They know how things go together. They know how systems, MEP systems, tie together, what proper sequence they go into. They know how to resolve a framing issue, like this, because they've built a lot of things. They're natural builders. They're your superintendent who knows the field. So anytime a project manager can lean into that archetype is incredibly powerful and makes you very influential um, over the everything that happens, because you can then take part of um, understanding issues, coming up with solutions, communicating them, especially if they're very complex ones, communicating them to clients and stakeholders. Um, these things are very important. So it even just makes you a better planner, uh, a better coordinator, um, and a better manager of the actual work. So it's like, think of like a software engineer, right? Or like you're leading a software project. If you knew how to code software, you'd be like an even better like manager of software engineers, I feel like, but that's your craft. So if if you know how to build projects, you're going to really know how to plan them, and you're really going to know how to run good meetings, and you're going to really know how to communicate right to the field guys, because you can speak to them at their level. You can talk about plumbing fittings, and you can talk about all this stuff. Um, so you just get a lot more leverage, and like I said, you become a lot more influential and valuable to the project.
Yeah, I like the comparison like between being like a say a product owner and knowing how to talk with the software engineers because you know how the coding works of that entire thing and makes it easier for you to communicate that language. So I like that reference a lot.
Right, right. Like, say I'm a good project manager, right? But if I were to go um, into the software world, I could help them build a schedule. I could help them, um, you know, the team leadership aspect of it, motivate them. But then but the language, I wouldn't be able to speak their language. So I'd be like kind of relying on them a lot to like, hey, well, they'll be like, hey, no, this actually takes like 2 weeks. You can't do this in 1 week because you got to write a million lines of code. Well, it's like, okay, well, it's like the same in construction. So yeah,
Yeah. Next one's my favorite, the leader.
um, that's my favorite too. Um, yeah, the leader is, as you can imagine, it's the basically the most influential and visible way to improve yourself is by following the leader. The leader is the person that puts the team, the team's needs, the team's goals, the team's mission above their personal interests and themselves. Okay, it's team first. I'm going to empower people. I'm going to develop and nurture more leaders. I'm going to um, delegate and communicate properly. And I'm going to instead um, not focus so much about what I can accomplish myself, but the leader is all about what they can accomplish through other people. Okay. It's a critical skill because it ties into everything you do. Um, you're going to need people to follow you. You need people, you need to be influential. Um, you need to be able to influence people's ideas. You need to be able to influence outcomes. And that is all starts with leadership. And leadership, we could dive into, there's a million frameworks. It's about taking extreme ownership, borrowing that from Jocko Willink. Owning the problems, owning everything that happens on your project. Um, it means delegating properly and empowering people to make decisions, kind of build up some decentralized command um, in your project. So, not making this a very vertically stacked team. The leader likes to spread uh, command and authority across their people. Um, Keeping things simple, building simple systems, simple methods, processes that facilitate decision making, that facilitate progress, that facilitate um, outcomes, the outcomes, and the leader gets the job done. At the end of the day, leadership is about getting results, not results from you, but results from the team, which is the most important, achieving those. So that is the leader. Yeah.
Yeah, I think talking about framework, I recently attended like one of the uh, training sessions. It was the SL2 leadership. I'm not sure how many of you guys are familiar with it, but SL2 basically it has this entire framework about knowing your personality of how you communicate, and as a leader you are obviously communicating a lot with your direct reports or your team members in general, and they had this framework of like there were four main categories of it, which was directive, supportive, coaching, and delegation. And a good leader would not be heavy on just one trait. A good leader should have a balance of all four or three at least, and they should identify what the other person needs. Because, say, if I have a directive style, but the other person who's asking questions to me needs a coaching style or needs a supportive style, then me being directive doesn't really serve the purpose and doesn't make me a good leader, if that makes sense.
Yes, very well said. Very well said. That gets back to communication, which is it's a component of leadership and um, understanding people's personalities, where they're at, where they need, and what your framework is great. What that ends up building is a team of dedicated individuals that are passionate, that they're happy, they're working on and they feel valued, and you're going to just create more leaders, and you build a team that's just so freaking strong that can, accomplish anything basically. I like a quote that I like to think about when I think of the leader. It's a quote, I don't even know who it's from, but build a team so strong that you don't know who the leader is. Like, if you can look at a team and you can't tell who the main leader is, that's what you want. Like, it's like it could be any one of these guys in this room, guys or girls. I don't know, because the leader created that, develop those people. It's so everyone's got command, authority, they're working on great things and they're contributing value. They're all taking ownership. I mean, that is what you want to strive for. That's what the influential project manager wants to strive for.
Awesome. The next one, which I think is sometimes overlooked upon, the attorney.
Mm, yes, the attorney is very important because why? Um, we in this industry, in this business, we are all bound by what? We are all tied together by contracts. Everyone. We're in a contract with the owner, a big gnarly contract with the owner. We're in a big gnarly contract with our subcontractors. They're in contracts with somebody. Our subcontracts are even tied to our owner's contracts. It is a web of contracts. And so, as a project manager whose also job is to manage and control risk, you need to know contracts, and you need to not only know them, you need to you need to understand them, and you need to be able to communicate them clearly to everyone involved in your project, because that's what you want to do. You want to keep everyone safe, right? You want to keep everyone out of trouble. You want to keep yourself out of trouble. You want to keep your subs out of trouble. You want to keep the owner out of trouble. You do that through understanding your project, understanding the contract, the prime, your subcontract agreements, your division 1 specifications, your contract documents. You need to know what this is, and then you need to be able to like distill all the main points around all the big things, and uh, be able to explain them to anyone like they're like 5 years old. Like a 5-year-old should be able to understand all these contract lingo and jargon, so that they can act on it, and they can be aware of it, and they can stay within the lanes that they need to stay in. And um, if you do that well, again, it's gonna be incredible for your project. Your risk is gonna be under control, and things will be successful.
Yeah, one thing I would like to add there is like usually what I found helpful is when you start the project, just scrubbing through the prime contract and making like a matrix of it, because that would just help you to know all the durations, the time frames, when you should send notices, what information the owner is expecting. I think that is something which I personally did, which helped me out just to understand the project holistically.
Yes, I do the same practice at the beginning of the project. I'll do my best to distill everything down into a digestible format, um, so people can understand it. And then I'll take it one step further. I'll make sure my team understands it, and I'll try and bake those things into our systems, into our day to day, our week to week, so that, hey, there's timeliness on change orders and there's timeliness on notifications and claims and delays. It's like, okay, let's bake those things into our day to day lives so that we can stay safe. So every week we got to review changes. We got to update our schedule. We have to do a monthly narrative to our clients. We have to um, put certain language into our communication, um, so that we can abide by this stuff. And it's not a weapon. That's the big thing. The attorney doesn't use the contract as a weapon. Okay, hey, the contract says this. They use it as a roadmap, a playbook. Okay, it's like, yeah, your playbook that governs the project, and it's not something to get take personally. It's just the rule book that everyone signed up for on this project. And if we communicate it that way, we're all going to be very safe and risk free.
Yep. So moving to the next one, the accountant, all financials.
Yes. Yeah. So the accountant, again, we're in where we build crazy, cool, and exciting, tough, challenging projects. As project managers, millions and millions of dollars come across our desk. We're managing millions of dollars, and most people don't even realize that they're not in charge. They don't recognize they're in charge of that this amount of budget and stuff, and we're responsible. We got to be good accountants. We have to understand the language of money, um, and what that means. We have to understand accounting best practices. Um, we have to understand cash flow and making sure that we're running our project like a healthy business. We have to understand how to project financials and see into the future and forecast cost, so that we can make really good decisions with our people, with our projects, with our resources that we have. Um, we have to be able to manage change, all the values and numbers that are changing when things happen. And all that comes down to good accounting practices. Um, you know, the accountant archetype is an analytical archetype. It's very, you know, analytical, spreadsheets, numbers. It's much different than being in these other archetypes, like the leader, like the enforcer. You also have to play the other side of the spectrum, which is the accountant is being good with these numbers, being able to organize this information and your data so that we can facilitate good decision making and we can run a good, healthy business.
Yeah, a good balance between behavioral traits and also core skills or analytical skills. So, well said. The last one that we have here is the business developer, networking, connections. Talk to me about it.
Yes, the business developer. So we as influential project managers have to remember that, um, we're not in the business just to do one project, right? It's like you do that, you're on one project. Most of us are doing one project, right? And okay, what are you going to do after that? Were you going to rely on, I guess you would rely on somebody else to line you up a project, but the best project managers are business developing while they're building. Okay, so how do you do that? That the business developer archetype is the sales guy. It's that archetype of the sales, the marketer, the guy that's laughing, the social guy, the relationship builder, the parrot that goes around talking to everybody, and um, that's an important skill set to hone in and do right. It really is. Um, Taking time to understand your client's needs. That's what this looks like. Stepping your client aside, say, hey, you know what? Let's go grab a bite to eat and just hang out. And tell me about your kids. How are they doing? What are they up to? What are they like? Um, Building also a personal relationship, not just this professional business relationship. This is the one where I'm kind of really weak in, to be honest. I'm trying to work on myself in this department. I can get really stuck into operations mode and just be an operator. Um, I have to be intentional about pulling out of the operator mode and taking a step back and just, okay, let's just relax, be fun, talk, get to know each other more. And then, once you develop those relationships, strengthen those, and it's like natural to say, hey, the owner, that was a really good and successful project because you did all the other 6 archetypes. But not only did that, you actually built a good relationship, and I had fun being around you. You're a fun person. So when can we do the next project, Kyle? I want to do another one with you. And then that at scale, you start building and developing. I mean, you just really increase your stock price when you start bringing in revenue and also making profit. It's like the best of both worlds. Um, so you really become more valuable, more influential, and provide just a better service when you also have that skill set as well.
Yeah. I think this was a great conversation with a lot of tips and tricks on how to kind of hit on each and try to at least improve it on your daily like practices or daily on your job sites. I think you also have on your Substack a dial where you could rate yourself to find out what your weaknesses are, and maybe that's the way to kind of do a personality test. I will obviously be honest with it, and then try to work on those skills.
Yeah. Let me pause you there because, yeah, I actually, for the listeners that are interested, want to go deeper on this whole thing. I wrote an entire book on this framework. Um, it's called No Bullshit Project. You can check it out. It's on Amazon. Um, but in that, on chapter 1, it has the wheel where you can evaluate yourself um, on each of the 7 archetypes. You could say, okay, where am I at right now? I'll do a snapshot of me at the beginning, at the end of 2024. I rate myself 1 out of 10 on each one: builder, leader, enforcer, business developer, accountant. You can rate yourself and see, like I said, round wheels. You want to be a well-rounded PM, and round wheels roll best. So rate yourself and you can see where you have gaps, and then you can pick 1 or 2 of those archetypes. Just pick 1 or 2 at a time. If you focus on all 7, you'll get nowhere. Pick 1 or 2 at a time and develop yourself from there, so you work on getting that wheel nice and round, and I think you'll see a big impact on your outcomes.
Yep. Thank you so much, Kyle. I think I personally learned a lot, and I hope listeners also take a lot from this as well. Again, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me. This was a great conversation.
Thank you for tuning in to Constructing Tomorrow. I hope this episode provided valuable insights and tips. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and drop a review or a comment. Until next time, keep building and stay curious.